on a deeper level to evaluate them and then be able to select the firm. And again, you have to remember, under the IFB that they did, they would have been required to take the firm that was deemed to be the most responsive and responsible bidder, offering the lowest price. And in something like this, and I don't want to, I don't look to spend more money than we need to, and I don't want you to think, and anyone on the committee to think that that's the way that I'm thinking about this. But the RFP allows you to pick the firm that you believe, based on the evaluative criteria, is best suited to do the work that you're looking for. And it doesn't always mean that it's the firm that is the lowest price. It could be the firm that bid 65,000 versus the firm that bid 59,000. It gives you a chance to actually go in, and it does give you other options. You could, as a group, decide that you wanted to have interviews with and use those in the evaluative criteria or the evaluative process with the two highest ranked firms to make before you made your final selection, because that may give you a comfort level with one firm over another. It just gives you a more in-depth process to select the firm that's ultimately going to do this work for you.
When you talked about that it had to be closed to the public, because I know we had the other group that was initially assigned to oversee this. We're going to let them be involved, or let them have some insight or some voice into the, at least not maybe the selection, but at least some input into the qualifications. Like I said, I'm not an investigator, so we had some people that we had more of a background in that.
But that's
So
go ahead.
So I was going to say, there is nothing prohibiting this committee from asking for help or from experts in writing the scope, the evaluative criteria, or even the any part of this up until it's released. There's nothing that would prevent you from asking for any outside experts' help if somebody's willing to help you to have input on the scope, what you're looking for in the criteria to evaluate, what you're looking for in determining the way that we use the evaluative criteria is highly advantageous, not advantageous, and non-responsive. There's nothing that says that we can't use or seek additional input from experts in that particular piece. The only part that is closed and not able to be within the public eye is the evaluation of the proposals until the process is complete. That's the only once they're received. Once we've put it out and people respond, the evaluation of those responses is solely done by the evaluation committee. That's and I'm assuming, and I believe it would be this group here. That is the only piece of this that is not available to public inspection until the process is complete. But anything leading up to that, Cliff, completely open. And if there are people that have expertise that would like to contribute, they are more than welcome to help contribute to the writing of it for the process.
Brian,
Does that answer your question?
Sure, yes.
Brian, a couple technical questions that I have for you in the process. When the RFP is released, what is the typical window that people have the ability to respond to? And then my second question, I'll wait for you to answer that, and I have a second.
Sure. Typically, we try to do anywhere between 30 to 45 days, and we usually within that window we give a period of time for questions to be submitted, to which we would then issue an addenda with responses, which is typically why we usually do closer to a 45-day window, but we've done them as short as 30 days, depending on the critical nature of what we're trying to procure.
Okay. And in terms of the evaluative criteria, the comments made on each proposal, are those anonymized and aggregated for review?
No.
So people can see, like, they would see each of our names associated with the criteria.
Yeah, it's statutorily, every reviewer has to make a comment on every rating, on every ranking and rating that they do. They have to, I guess, justify is not necessarily probably the most the best word, but they have to justify and give a rationale for why they chose the ranking for that particular criterion that they did.
Okay, thank you.
And then the committee as a whole comes to an overall ranking with a justification written as to why they came to that for each proposal that's received.
Okay,
Okay, so last week we did sort of adopt some criteria. And
Mhm.
we had one or two points of qualifications. So what happens next? Who puts this all together?
So Cindy Sue in my office, who's the assistant procurement officer, deputy procurement officer, is the one that generally we use the online platform called OpenGov to do these because it's online and the submittals are all locked and opened at the time. So she would be the one that would be helping the committee get it into the format in Word that goes into OpenGov to get released. And the other thing that I want to note is members of the committee or members of the public may know firms or believe that they know firms that may be interested. People, in order to submit, need to be registered with OpenGov, but if they give us the names, we can have OpenGov can send them an invitation to register so that they could participate in the procurement and review the solicitation and decide if they wanted to submit.
so I understand that, Brian. So like we come up with this, we know that this is going out. If any of us
Mhm.
on the committee know like a company or consultant that we would
Sure.
encourage
Yep.
to apply, it's not just sending out the RFP. We need to
No.
get their email to you so that an
Correct.
invitation can go out so they can be
Yes.
invited to apply.
Yes, so they would be invited to register with OpenGov as a vet, and then they would become a vendor, and then they would be able to download the solicitation and then respond to it within the OpenGov platform that we use. Because we do
Okay,
all of our solicitations for procurements are done online.
okay. And is OpenGov, is this something that's like a national sort of software platform, or is it unique to
No,
Massachusetts?
it's
I'm
it's
just
it's
curious.
a national, it's multi-module platforms for
Okay,
to it. Procurement is one of the platforms. We use it for budgeting. We use it for asset management. We have multiple different platforms, but we do use their procurement platform as well.
so for instance, a company in New Hampshire may hear about this opportunity, want to apply, and if they have an OpenGov ID already registered for work they do in a
Yes.
municipality in
They,
New
yeah,
Hampshire, they could easily access
they could
it.
easily access ours.
Okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Any
And
other?
Malcolm, I could have Cindy attend the next meeting, and if you have some basic framework of a scope or some criterion already developed and you want to email them to me, or I can send you Cindy's email and you can send them to her and we can start building it out. Because it's probably going to take, once we start, we'll probably go through at least, I would say, a minimum of at least two reviews once we get it started and built out to make sure that the committee we've captured everything that you've sent us and you're happy with it. Because I don't want to post anything until the committee says this is good to go and we're pleased and happy with everything that's in there. I mean, we do
So
have boilerplate front end, just characteristics about Nantucket and things that we put in everyone, and there are some statutory forms that we have to include in these, such as, tax compliance and non-collusion, but those are just statutory, but the basic meat and potatoes of this is going to be developed with your help. So we do send this to the groups that compile them to make sure that we've captured everything.
So our next meeting is next Monday evening.
Yep. Okay.
If we had something to you tomorrow,
Yep.
could Cindy come to our next meeting Monday?
I can check. She's actually out until Tuesday. She's traveling, but I could see if she could log in remotely. She's working remotely right now.
See, I think we're gonna have very short, brief meetings until we actually get to the time of reviewing.
Okay. Do you have stuff right now?
Yes, we have stuff.
Okay. Can you send it to me?
Okay,
And I will send it to her and ask her to start doing the intake to OpenGov so we can start getting it in. And I'll look at it and give you some feedback on it to start with.
Yeah, we have some criteria and a couple ideas of the qualifications we talked about last time. And
Okay, one thing that we typically have done, and we try not to make it too difficult because we want to get a broad spectrum of respondents, but there may be some minimum criteria that you want every respondent to have that if they don't have, they can't move forward. So you may want to think about that. Now, it may be, sometimes we need to have if we're doing, as an example, if we're doing something for an engineering RFP for procurement, we may put a minimum criteria must have been ordinarily and customarily engaged in sewer design for a minimum of, the firm must be engaged a minimum of 5 years in order to go, just so that we know that we're not the first place that they've ever tried to design sewer work for. So we do some minimum criteria. You may not want to. That is something you can think about. But if you send me what you have, we can start putting it into the various sections and getting it organized so that we can start walking through it with you and working with you on updates and changes and getting it ready.
we discussed that last week, that we didn't want this firms to be their first job.
I know. Just why
And
I
the-
did bring it up, because I would probably assume that you, hopefully correctly, that you wanted them to have some experience having done this
Right.
before.
We have experience, and the other was an independence of previous exposure to Nantucket administration, police department, and so forth.
Okay.
I think those were the two biggest criteria we had. I don't know how you're gonna word that, but it would be, I'll go look at the minutes from last week and.
Okay. Well, yeah, you can send it and we can start start developing the framework from whatever you sent, and then once you see it in the framework, it may help kind of put it in context and help kind of guide you down the road a little bit easier. Because I think it's a little bit hard just sitting around kind of do it without seeing it in the framework and the criteria and everything.
I would love to leave next Monday's meeting with a pretty much a document like 99% complete. I mean,
I can't promise you 99% complete for Monday, but we'll do our best. How's that?
well, this committee is kind of anxious to get going, and we've been.
I am anxious to help the committee get going, so
Thank you.
we'll do our best.
This is an issue that's been around for a long time.
I want to get this out on the street so we can get people here so that the committee can do the good work of reviewing and getting it started. So
That's what we're here for. Okay.
yeah.
Any
I-
other?
I have one other question. Brian, where does this go out to bid? Like, where do people go to find out this information is,
So there are advertising requirements as well. There's statutory advertising requirements, and I suspect the advertising requirements don't require us to go very far, Rocky. It requires us essentially to put it in the newspaper of local circulation, and it goes on our website and of such. But I suspect we may probably want to put it in circulation a little bit farther than that. So, but again, therein is also why we always suggest to people, if you know firms or people have expressed interest, get their contact information so we can reach out and advise them on how to be able to participate. Now that we use the online, we would send them the invitation to register with OpenGov to be able to participate. But I suspect we'll probably talk about what other publications to advertise this in as well. Other than just the INM, because statutorily the advertising requirements only require a newspaper of local circulation, but firms aren't, in Metro Boston or anywhere in New England aren't probably reading the Inquirer and Mirror. So we've got to figure a way to make sure we get it farther out, and it may be in like the MMA trade publications or something as well. We'll get into some publications and figure a way to get it to a broader masses.
I mean, since one of our qualifications was independence of Nantucket.
Yeah, I know.
I think it'd have to go a little farther than the INM, and then Cliff has some people we can talk to,
Yep, absolutely.
suggestions of where to put this. Right, anything else from the committee?
Just, Brian, since you do this all the time, have committees or groups in the past requested like a declaration of potential conflict of interest? Because I think in our discussion last week around the independence of Nantucket, we wanted people to disclose if they've had a relationship to possible parties being investigated or part of this process, or to the town to disclose the nature of that. Is that some standard language that you guys typically have, or that you could easily rephrase? Or are we asking for something that's going to be a hassle for you? I'm just curious.
No, and that's a great question, Dr. Trent. I don't. This is probably, to be very honest with you, not the normal procurement RFP that we do. It's a little bit different than a lot of them that we've undertaken. There is a form statutorily that is required that is a non-collusion form that basically certifies that they have not colluded with anybody in the town in the preparation of this. I think that there would not be any issue. I'd have to go back and double check, but I don't foresee an issue with probably developing something or even asking the question for them to certify any conflicts or anything to that effect with any parties in the town of Nantucket. I think it would be reasonable to ask that question with respect to what is trying to be accomplished with this one. It's not something that we ordinarily do, like I said, just because of the typical types of procurement that we're trying to do are different than what we're trying to accomplish with this one. So it's not something that is a normal practice, but I think it's something that we reasonably could create something to do within this procurement.
Yeah, because I think the concern is to make sure that in securing independence around this, and to be as transparent as possible for the community, that we can disclose the nature of an organization's relationship to Nantucket. But I think, with something like this, it's not going to have any teeth if we can't say something along the lines of you forfeit or terminate, or the contract can be null and void, or whatever that is. That seems more of like a legal, your town council getting involved in what that phrasing in it. It might be boilerplate. They might know like this is what other municipalities have done in the past with things like that. But I think what we all are hoping for is to have a level of transparency in the process, so that if there is a relationship, people have disclosed. Because the last thing we all want to do is go through this whole process, find out some relationship of the parties involved, and then all this work was null and void because someone failed to
Sure.
disclose. And now the town, it creates another situation for us.
We may not want to make it part of the evaluative criteria, but we could make a question in there for them to disclose any work that they've done in the town of Nantucket for the town, and to describe the nature of that work to the extent that they can disclose what the work was. Because we don't certainly want to compromise any confidentiality, if there is any associated with any previous work. And then we can ask them to disclose any I'm trying to think how to say it, but any relationships with anyone within the town, and the nature of those, I guess we could say, we can find a way to do it.
Okay.
And then we can, figure out how the committee would deal with that. So
Okay.
that it would be known up front as you're going through the evaluative process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That'd be helpful. Any other questions for Brian? Anybody, questions from the community? People at large?
And I have a public comment. Did we send any invites to like Barbara Burgel or Charlie Perry? Because I know we were gonna do public comment, not on the committee, that do we do anything like that?
Nothing specific. We
Okay.
posted it with the agenda.
All right.
Yeah, that was posted on Thursday.
Yes,
Is there a link on there is?
yes.
Okay.
Are there any questions from the public for Brian while he's here? Any other comments at all? Because on the agenda, I put in start work on the request. Well, we sort of started work on the request.
Mm.
And so we will get to Brian what we sort of talked about last week. And then next Monday, we'll get to work and get the RSP going. So thank you. Thank you very much for coming, sir.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate your expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
So then we
Thank you.
now, any concerns of the committee, any comments that anybody wants to make? I think we have a path. Any comments from the public? Okay, fine. And do I have a motion to adjourn and we'll meet next week?
Motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second,
Second.
Mm.
Okay, by roll call, Rocky,
yes.
Dr. Pratt,
Yes.
Luke? Yes. And the chairman says aye, we are adjourned.
There you go.
Thank you, and you can do a prayer if you'd like. Okay. We'll see you all next week.
Yep. Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you,
Try to get to
everyone.
some work.